So here's what I want to bring to y'all is an easy way to identify intervals. Okay. So by the end of this, you'll have a quick and easy way to identify what an interval is, how to see one on music, and how to see them on a keyboard. Okay. I don't promise anything fancy, complicated, or anything like that. This is just raw, down and dirty introduction to an interval. Okay. Now, my full length course can be found on my school page, and I'll put the link in the bottom of this video. And you can come check it out for more in depth courses. But for right now, this is going just to be a quick, down and dirty. This is what an interval is. This is what it looks like on the staff, and this is what it looks like on a keyboard type thing. Give you tricks to count them. Okay. So let's go. So to begin with, what is an interval? Okay. So an interval is just the distance between two notes. That's it. Simple, basic explanation. Okay, so like it's the distance like you're measuring two people sitting on a couch. There's space in between them. That's the distance we're looking at. Is this little invisible space between notes. All right. So, excuse me. If the notes they happen like one after another, this is a melodic interval. Okay, think melody. Okay, one after another, melody, melodic interval. Okay, if they happen at the same time, it's a harmonic interval. So it's like chords. Okay, has everyone seen a piano player playing like this, like three notes at a time, like C, E, and G is a chord. Okay, and there's intervals in between. It'd be harmonic intervals. Okay, so the way we think of intervals is like in steps. So if you think about walking up steps, it takes space to get to another step, right? When you lift your leg, and you also come back down. Okay, because intervals they go in the same directions. You're coming up and you're coming down. There's steps to come down. There's steps to go up. Okay, it's just another way to think about it. Um, how do we figure out what the names of these intervals are, though? Okay, so if you look at my screen here, I have this basic staff up, and I have a little keyboard underneath it. Okay, so easier visualization for you, and try to drive this home for a little bit. So when we are naming these, first we want to count them. Okay, so we count from the bottom. So for example, like this one right here, this is a C, right? That is number one. You always count on the note that you're starting from. Always on the first one. That's always one. That's your root. Okay. And so our next one up would be an interval space between these two notes. So if we go up to another note, which would be a D right in between these two notes, that would be two. Okay. Now I got another note sitting here. That would be your third note. Okay. And it just continues all the way up to the octave, which would be number 8. You're starting back at C, just in this octave up here. Okay. So there's 8 of them to count. 8, we usually don't say 8, we usually just say octave, because then you're on the starting note in another octave. Okay. But all these numbers leads us to giving the intervals names, like second, third, fifth. Okay. That just derives from counting. All right. So an easy way to remember the numbers. Okay, so second, when we say something is a major second, an interval, okay? So second is just 2 steps apart. You can use your fingers for this. You don't even need your toes. You only need about this many fingers. This is great for us that have to pull off the shoes and the socks. Okay, so if you're going to count numbers and you need your fingers, you can always use them. So you just count like 1, 2. Well, look, that one is a second. If you got like C to E, there's 3 in there. C, D, E. There's 3. So it's a third apart. Okay. It's the easiest way to count them. And you can even look down here at this keyboard. I have C, E written up here on the staff. C to E is 3. There's 3 notes in between C, D, and E. Okay, now we're not getting fancy with all the half steps yet. Okay, so don't worry about these. Those little black keys here, those are half steps and stuff, and don't worry about them right now. Those come in at a later date. All right, right now we're just going to keep it simple, keep you counting, and just give you this down and dirty version of an interval, of explanation of an interval. Okay, so there are different qualities to an interval. Okay, so what makes it major, minor, perfect? Okay, so major, minor, and perfect are the qualities of the intervals. That's what their sounds are. So now that you know how far apart these notes are, now we need to know what kind of interval it is. What kind, what quality is it? Okay, so just quick rules of thumb for this. So a perfect interval, okay, is known as, like, the first one is unison. First, that's when two notes are played exactly the same. So unison would be like if I have two C's side by side. That'd be unison. The interval is the same. Okay, they're both one. Okay, another example of a perfect interval would be a fourth, a fifth, and up to the octave or the eighth. Okay, so these just sound very stable and simple. They're simple intervals. They sound stable. They don't have any kind of weird quality to them to where they're sounding sad, making you depressed, and all that. They are very present, stable intervals. That's why we call them perfect. Okay, because they sound perfect. So, major and versus a minor. Okay, so the other intervals of seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths, okay, they can be major or minor. All right, minor is exactly 1/2 step smaller than a major. Okay. The easiest way to explain major versus minor is a little bit more melancholy type, sad sounding, or that's just a basic description of a minor. Major is more associated with happy, triumphant, all that. That's just a basic thing. No technicalities in this class. Is just how we're going to remember it for now. Okay. So just remember that a minor is exactly 1/2 step smaller than a major. So an example, let's use the piano for this one. So I'm going to use C to E. Okay. C to E is known as a major third. Okay, because we got three notes here and nothing weird. It's all C, D, E. C to E. Okay. You got one, two, three. Three notes. It's a major third. Nothing weird. All right. So, but if we want to change that to minor, okay, all we do to take it to a minor third is mess with that third. And remember, minor is 1/2 step smaller than a major. Okay, I want to show you this. So we're going from C to E again, okay, because it's the easiest thing to show you. So we are using these three keys. Okay, got one, two, three, and that third we got to make it just a little bit smaller than a major. To do that, hit that black key right there. Okay, that'll flatten it. So now you have C to E flat, and we just made it a minor third. Okay, just flatten the top note by a half step. Very basic, very easy, and you get your minor third. Okay, nothing too strenuous, nothing too mind blowing or anything just yet. Okay, I like all the easy stuff, so I like to give you tips and tricks and all that. I like to give it to you all, give it all to you. You're even getting the bloopers on this because I stutter a lot. Okay, so yeah, the easiest way to make like a minor third, for example, is flatten that third note. Just put a flat there, and then you have something minor. Okay, so how do you recognize and hear these intervals? Okay, so if you're training your ear and you want to hear this, there are some classic melodic reference songs that you can use to identify these intervals. I'll give you a few. Okay, so if you're looking for a minor second, who's ever watched Jaws? Who's ever heard the theme song to Jaws? Okay, it's a little creepy half step. It's a do 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 do. Okay, that's your minor second. Okay, so if you want an example of a major second, happy birthday. Okay, in the beginning, happy birthday. I don't sing very well, so you know, in your head, if you can sing very well, awesome. Um, happy birthday is an example of having a major second. Okay, so if you want to hear a perfect fourth in there, listen to Here Comes the Bride. Here comes the bride. Do 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 do. Okay, you have examples of a perfect fourth in those chord structures. Okay, now looking at a perfect fifth. Okay, think back to your childhood or kids singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. That's an example of having a perfect fifth. Okay, now an octave is just going from low to high. Keep it simple. All right, so think Wizard of Oz. Okay, when she sings "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," somewhere over the rainbow, and that somewhere is an octave. She's going from one starting note to the next note she just started on, just in a higher octave. Okay, so feel free to sing it out, listen to them. Those are just examples of where you can hear the intervals. Okay, so I like to give out tips. Like I've said this like 3 or 4 times already, probably. I don't know. If you're keeping track, good for you. You know, but the first tip I would say is get yourself a piano, either virtually, like I have on the screen here, or if you have one around the house, you can buy one or whatever you want to do. Get one out of a dumpster, whatever. Um, if you know where C is, okay, you can count all the intervals. Piano is very easy laid out in just intervals. Okay, you can see the whole steps and the half steps and everything. Like I mentioned before, like a half step would be from like C up here to C sharp. And it's just a half step here. There's a half step going down here because they go in both directions. Okay, that's just half steps right there. You can count them all if you want to. Might get a little boring. Where piano tricks you is that between these two notes here, there's nothing there, right? But there's only a half step there. Let's keep that in mind. Um, another little tip, trick, whatever you want to call it, whatever the current lingo is for it now, is to use a scale. Okay, so all notes in a major scale, like C major. So a C major scale goes from C to C with nothing weird, no sharps or flats. Okay, it's the most widely used example because of how easy it is to use. So, like if I'm doing a C major scale, it's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? Easy. Go from one octave to another, C to C, nothing weird, no sharps, no flats. Okay, so a C major scale will tell you right away. Second is major, third is major, etc. C major scale, it's going to be major. Okay. So another one is flip it. Do an inversion trick. This is where it might get a little bit weird, but you can turn the interval upside down and big numbers become small ones. Third becomes a sixth, second becomes a seventh. Okay. I have more on that one in another class. I can show you more. Um, but that is just one trick that I was taught a couple years ago by a friend, and it's a little bit of a weird one, but I put it out there. Okay, so why do all these intervals matter? Okay, because intervals are everywhere. They are the basic structure of chord construction. Triads are just stacked intervals. Okay, if you want to shape melodies, big jumps equal dramatic, small steps is smooth. Okay, if that makes sense to you. Melodies are all in intervals. Either they're jumping around, creating the melody, or they're doing little small steps everywhere to make this pretty thing. Okay, and you also comes handy when you're training your ear to hear these things. So when you're in ear training, it helps you recognize the tunes by the relationships, not just the names. Okay, if you can hear the relation of the intervals and stuff, then your brain is going to start knowing and recognizing these little recognizing these intervals and chords and all that. All right, you don't necessarily have to know like the names of them. You can just go, I know what that is. Okay, if it helps you play whatever your instrument is, or helps you write whatever you're writing, awesome. That's what it's for. Okay, so how do you practice something like this? Okay, so what you can do is you can play two notes. Okay, and quiz yourself. And once you get the hang of major and minor, distinguishing the two, just find a keyboard or something and find something virtual and play something and test yourself with it. Okay, or you can listen to those songs and it gives you more of a real life application to it. Actively listen to a song and try to pick these intervals out instead of just passively listening to something that sounds catchy, or the words are just like letting you bop along, stuff like that. The beats are catchy. Find an actual song that has human influence in it, to where a human has to play, the drums has to play, the bass guitar, the rhythm guitar, all that, and then you'll be able to hear all these intervals. Something that's piano heavy is easier to hear intervals on and hear all these progressions and stuff. That's my thing for my advice to you. Um, so like intervals, they become like secret codes in music. Okay, once you get them, everything opens up. All right. Um, you can use the counting tricks on here. It's real easy. All you gotta do is count every note, but just remember, start on that first note. Don't skip it. Don't sit there and go, okay, that's where I'm starting. That's one. No. Once you put a note up here like this, that becomes one. There's one in here for two, because that would be D. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? That's how to get down intervals quickly. Count them. Use your fingers if you have to. Like I said, you only need about this many fingers. You don't have to pull off the socks and the shoes. So it makes it easier for us that need to do math on the fingers. Music math ain't as bad as algebra or some of that crazy stuff. So hopefully this has helped you in a quick, down and dirty way of explaining what intervals are, um, and how to like count them and how they're named. Okay, so that way you start building off of this basic knowledge, and it will help you with chords, then building scales, and so on, making your own compositions, or even learning more about whatever you play or want to play. Okay, it helps be an overall rounded musician. All right, so I got more that's going to come in these little snippets and stuff like that. And I also have more full courses that I actually designed specifically for people on my school community. Um, I can always be found there, and I can always be contacted through there. Okay. And if you're interested in anything more in depth, get a hold of me, and even like this video if you like it. Subscribe to whatever. You know the deal. However, everyone's always signing off. I will see you next time on another down and dirty music theory tip. Peace.